Hello, right, okay, so this is going to be a complete run through of all of the tips, tricks and things that I've learned over the years from other players, things I've discovered myself, things I find that work sort of better for me, that might not work better for you, but at least I'm going to show you all the options and settings and things so you'll be able to play around with these and then discover what works best for you. Now in the settings, you're going to see in the top left hand corner there's a star, that's for your favourites. So as you go through any of these settings, things that you really like, it does say in the bottom left hand corner of the screen somewhere that you can click. I think for me it's Y, and then I can set those as favourites. So I've got aim response, aim assist, proximity chat, and I've also got the centre dot, which we're going to come to later. So what we're going to do is going to go on to graphics. Now it's very important you turn these things on and off as I tell you. So world motion blur needs to be off. Your weapon motion blur also needs to be off. Your film grain, that needs to be set to 0. Depth of field is going to be to on. Fidelity, CAS, don't even know what that is, but have it off. And then we're going to go down to your field of view. Now field of view is very important because it allows you to see more of what's around you in your peripheral vision, which will give you a bit of an advantage. So I set mine to about 103. But once you've done that, then go down and change your ADS field to affected. Then the rest of these aren't really going to affect you. You don't really need to look any more at these. We're going to go on to audio. So into your audio, go onto your master and expand that. Now these are the settings I have. You might want them less, but I have 100% volume. I have the first two set to 4. Effects set to 100 because that's very important, because this is where you're going to hear the footsteps. Now the footsteps is between life and death, hearing someone coming and not. Voice chat I set at 70, but you can normally change that in game anyway. Cinematics I have that down to 0 or 4. Now other than that, there's not really much else you need on the audio settings. So we're going to come out of that. Tendencies is probably helpful actually if you turn that on, because it's less of that sound as the flashbangs go off. We're going to go on to interface. So on the interface section, again there's all sorts of things you can change on here, text, chat, messages, but I have it onto the color filters for what you can see for your HUD. So for, as you can see on there, different colors for you, your team and your enemy. They personally work better for me, and I can see them better. Now your mini-map menu here, you want to set to square, because you'll be able to see more of the mini-map than you will do if it's set on round. Map rotation should be set to on. Horizontal compass, I have it switched on. Crosshairs obviously switched on. Hit marker visuals. All these things that you can see on here that I've got switched on, just make sure they're switched on as well. But the center dot, very, very important. Now under the center dot, once you have it switched on, you can actually change the size to off, and then obviously large and then larger. So now what we're going to do is going to go onto the firing range, and we're going to play with some settings and then show you the effects that those have. So when we go back into the settings, we're going to change the controller and how it reacts. So we're going to go on to the basic settings of the controller, go down to horizontal and vertical stick sensitivity. This is where you're going to move that slider left and right to increase or decrease that value. Now the lower the value, then the slower you'll move left and right, as well as the higher you increase that value to, the faster you move. Now what I like to do is I like to come on to the firing range, and then I'll run backwards and forwards to test out this setting, and then I'll turn around and try and face the other way and aim at the wall, so I can lock on in the middle of that wall. Now you can increase and then decrease those settings until you feel that you're able to do that and accurately lock onto the middle of the wall behind you. The reason being is that when you get into a gunfight, sometimes you're running along, you get shot in the back, and then you can suddenly jump, turn around, and hopefully be able to lock on and shoot that person. You may or may win it, but it will give you an advantage that you wouldn't have had previously. Now this is what the insane setting looks like on 20, where I try and actually, I don't even know where I am at the moment. When I jump, turn around, I've overshot, gone too far to the left, too far to the right. It's really hard to control. So that's why it's important just to practice, play with the settings, bring them down, probably around about 4 again to start with, and then you can move them up again as you feel you start to get more confident with the controller. Now for aim assist for assault rifles, I would say I'd go with Black Ops. When I'm using snipers, I tend to go for focusing. You can use precision, but I prefer focusing for sniping. There's a reason for that, and it's to do with the aim slowdown, which I'll show you later on. But aim response, start with standard. I tend to go with linear, but for you, we're going to start with standard. You don't really have to worry too much about the ADS multiplier. It's only when you hold your breath on a sniper. Your ADS sensitivity is going to be instant. Then we have the custom sensitivity per zoom. So this is for the different scopes that you can put on all the different weapons, which we can adjust, but we'll go into that later. And we have input dead zone. Now this affects your actual controller itself and the amount of input you have to give on the different sticks and the triggers in order to actually get them to initiate. Pause the video, just copy the settings I've got here and apply it to your settings. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set the aim type assist to Black Ops, and I'm going to demonstrate what that looks like. So as we move the scope across in one smooth movement, what you'll notice is as it moves, it will slow down just before it gets to the target, as it goes over the target and as it just goes past the target, and then it will pick up its speed again. So this is what is meant by aim assist. There are different settings because you've got Black Ops, which is better for assault rifles, SMGs, etc. And then for focusing, that's what I tend to use. So if we go on a focusing now, what you'll find is that it's actually got a stronger slowdown, but that only kicks in almost as you hit the actual target itself. And then as you're almost off the target, it carries on. So I personally think that using focusing for sniping and using the Black Ops for assault rifles, SMGs, LMGs, any other gun. If you tend to strafe left and right as you're aiming with using the Black Ops, it'll actually stick to the target a lot better. So I'm trying to keep that white dot there in the center of the screen wherever I'm looking. All right, you need to practice that so that as you go around, you're using that and focusing on that to line up your shot before you even lift the gun up to aim. So what I will do is I'll go around different maps on my own, target on the target ranges, and I'll use that and I'll focus on the objects, trying to keep those crosshairs on those items so that when I do bring up my sight, I don't have to move the gun from right to left or left to right onto the target. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to move from left to right, trying to keep those crosshairs on the targets so that if I do need to bring the gun up, it's pretty much already within that range and I don't have to make too much of an adjustment to get onto the target. Moving from right to left like that, you could probably be dead before you've even got to fire a round off. Now I'm going to strafe left and right, this time trying to do the same thing, keep those crosshairs on the targets. And the other thing I like to do is to run, jump and try and keep those crosshairs on the target as I snap round from right to left. So that if I was jumping around the corner of a building or a wall and you see a person's around there, you're already facing down in their direction. Now in this room, from this section, I'm picking different objects around the room. It doesn't have to be the target downrange, but I'm noticing that maybe it's slightly overshooting a little bit, so it's probably a little bit too fast. So I'm just going to bring that down to 6 and 6, and then I go back and I'll recheck it again, keep those crosshairs on them, and I'm finding I can actually get onto those targets a little bit quicker and a little bit more accurately because I'm not moving too far past them and I've got more control of those crosshairs. So now I'm going to run and jump, same as I did before, doing the jump and turn to face the target, trying to acquire the target by keeping those crosshairs in the direction, so I'm making like a 90-degree jump to the left or the jump to the right. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be talking about recoil. Now every gun has different recoil, different attachments you put on guns are also going to affect the recoil, whether it make it better or worse. There's a trade-off. You might get a faster aim down sight time, but the recoil might be worse, or you get better recoil, but it will take you longer to bring that gun up to fire. So to test that on this weapon here, I'm just aiming at the door and firing and letting the magazine completely empty so I can see the travel of where those bullets go. So this one goes up and over to the right. So to control that, I need to pull slightly down to the left. And if I do that, just a tiny amount on the right stick there, as I fire, you'll see that it keeps it in a nice little group. This is where I'll go back, I'll check with the targets, I'll do the same thing, slight little adjustment bottom left to adjust for that recoil. You can then come out of this and then go back and add different attachments on, play with different attachments to see if you can get a better recoil for that weapon to make it easier to control. Now on this part here, I'm showing you the speed in which the sniper scopes, for example, will move depending on the setting that you have them on. So when we go onto the settings and then we go onto the different scope settings, down to the largest one there for the 12 times, I'm going to actually bring that all the way down to as low as it can go. And then you'll see when we go back onto the range how slowly that scope moves. So when you aim down sights with a really low setting like this, as you can see, that's me full left, full right on the stick. That's really slow. That's great if you're looking at something that's long range, because you can be really accurate at tracking that person that's running left or right. But if it's mid-range or closer, it's not going to be good for you, because it's going to be like you're stuck in tar. You can't move fast enough to actually get onto them. So going back in, we're going to just change that, go onto the setting again, move that slider back up. And this is where you have to just keep going in, tweaking, playing with the settings, find that movement, that setting that works better for you, for your current skill set, until you get to the point where you feel like, actually, I could do that a little bit faster now. And then you would increase it. So for ADS, for something that doesn't have a sight like this, as you can see, that moves fairly quickly onto it. You don't want it to go too slowly, because again, the longer it takes you to move your sight onto a target, the more likely it is you're going to get shot and killed before you get a chance. This is on the highest setting, and as you can see, it's just ridiculously quick. Really hard to get a very accurate aim on that at all, and if someone's running around, you'd be all over the shop. You wouldn't know what you were doing, and you probably wouldn't hit a thing. So best to bring it down, start at 1, which is the basic, that's the default setting, and see how that feels. You can then increase, decrease, play with it until you feel that you could keep track of a target and lock onto it fairly accurately without overshooting it and going past it. This just comes with time. Keep playing the game, keep tweaking the little settings, and you will eventually find that setting that works for you. As you can see, I can move fairly quickly, snappy, on from one to the other. If you're doing that and you're finding you're shooting past one of the targets onto the next one past it, then it's probably a little bit too quick for you. Next thing is we're going to bring that down just to make that a little bit slower and make it a little bit more manageable. So I can still move fairly swiftly onto the next target, but it's a little bit more accurate. I can now track the target moving left and right. Practice, as they say, does make perfect, so the longer you practice this and keep doing it, you will get better at it. But the next step is going to be going on to a private match with some bots, so we can test these things that we've learnt out and the different settings we've put on there, fine tune them and tweak them onto a private match, which I'll show you now. So you want to come across onto the main menu and you want to go down one setting all the way to the far right. It says private match, go onto there, start the private match. You want to choose a team deathmatch. Once you've done that, it has to load in for a while, but once it does, the settings are going to open up and you'll be able to tweak those in a minute. Now in the top right hand corner of the screen there where your name is, you'll see that it says auto assign. Now if you change that to one of the other factions, Cortac or Spec Gru, just remember the one you're going to be. So if you're Spec Gru, for example, when we go into these settings next, we want the bots to be the opposite faction. So on here we're going to choose, say, 4. We're going to go down and we're going to change those to a recruit so that they're going to be fairly easy, they're not going to be too responsive, and make sure they're on the opposite faction. Now we're going to choose a map. I tend to choose small maps like this, and then you can go into the settings as well and increase the amount of points and the amount of time that you can spend on that map depending on how long you want to play it for and practice. When we go into the game, you're going to have your different loadouts again, which you can create, but from everything we've learned now with those crosshairs, you'll see I'm trying to keep those at all times. If I jump to the right, I want that to be aiming down the alleyway. Around to the right, I want it to be aiming around the corner, so that if there is a target there, you see I just bring the gun up and I can shoot. Private matches for me are pretty good as a great warm-up, get ready before you're going to go online. They're also good to learn maps that you might not be too familiar with, or just to have a little bit of time to walk around the map and just sort of observe where everything is, map things out, and then you'll be better off when you actually go into a live match because you'll know where all the different rooms are, where the different doors lead to, where enemies could be coming from, where they could be sniping from, which are the best places to snipe from, which are the best places to hold, booby traps, all that sort of stuff. But for the purpose of this, obviously, we're getting warmed up, we're making sure that we've got those crosshairs at all times, facing the direction where potential enemies could be, so that when we do bring that sight up, they're already pretty much in sight, and we can make a tiny adjustment and then shoot. So that's pretty much all my tips and tricks, things that I've picked up along the way. I hope that you find them helpful and that they can help you improve your game. They should do. They help me and they've helped many others. So just go around, keep practicing, and I'll see you online soon.